but nobody serves down in Fresno. Yeah, nobody serves there, not at all. No, 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 nobody serves down in Fresno.
Geology.
But everybody there, they rock and roll.
Geology.
Rock and roll.
And Geology. Welcome to the Mini Geology radio program. This is Daniel Minizini, your inquisitive geologist, in HD2 channel of KPFT from Houston, Texas. Welcome everybody to the radio show where we talk every week about topics that put in relationship or develop geology with society. Well, today we're going to have Elsevier in the house. We have a representative of Elsevier. Elsevier, known as a publisher company, in fact, is a global information and analytics company with more than 7,000 employees in 46 countries. Elsevier owns Science Direct, the largest database of peer-reviewed research with more than 15 million references, and Scopus, a citation database, including 5,000 publishers. We'll talk about the publishing industry today. We're going to talk also about the debate on the open access, also about the new methods to manage information. And we'll talk with Phoebe McMellon, a geologist and director of marketing, engineering, and technology at Elsevier. Welcome, Phoebe, that you came directly from New York here in the studios of Houston. Welcome.
Thank you, Daniel. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
I would like you to introduce and set the stage about the industry where Elsevier is encased so that we know a little bit more.
Yeah, so I guess we are known as a publisher. I think almost every oil and gas conference that I go to, people come up to our booth asking about our books and if we have this book or that book. But we really have been transforming our business since really the late 60s into what we would call ourselves now as a information analytics company. And yes, we have content. We have lots of content and millions of articles, millions of researchers that use our platform, Science Direct, like you mentioned. But the way in which we're transforming our business has started with trying to find efficiencies largely between author, researcher, and the way they publish and disseminate the information. In my time in Elsevier, which has been the last 10 years, we really started getting into making decision support tools. And what I mean by that is tools that help geologists like yourself working in the oil and gas industry understand the geology better, where are the risks associated with a oil and gas opportunity. We also help doctors maybe identify diseases better. We help nurses in their training and their educations. We help pharma companies develop drugs better. So we started moving away from just creating an article or a book, but what more can we do with going into the insights, extracting insights, whether it be data, or collecting a bunch of clinical trials and aggregating them together so somebody can make a decision on whether it's good to invest in a drug. So
this is true only for Elsevier or for all the other companies that compete in that environment?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We've become more of an aggregator. I mean, Science Direct is still Elsevier's content, but Scopus that you mentioned has 5,000 publishers on it. In fact, most of the digital tools that we offer today are including other publishers. Some of our traditional publishing competitors, so to speak, like Wiley and Springer and so forth, because I think something I recognized 10 years ago when I was brought on board, or I was hired to build a product, GeoFacets. And one thing we heard immediately when we went out to the market to talk to customers about this idea, which was really from companies like Shell or NE or Repsol that were trying to get to the data, was Elsevier is great, but there's so much more out there. And for us to really feel confident in our interpretations, we need more than just Elsevier. So many of the industries that we serve and also the researchers that we go to, we know that there's an ecosystem of science out there, and we're starting to serve that, right?
Is there any special need required by the geoscientist with respect to the many other disciplines that you serve, like medicine or engineers? Anything special for the geologists?
Yeah, so I think when I was hired and I came aboard in 2009, the challenge was that geologists, particularly those in exploration, wanted to get to the data in the article. I think in the oil companies, you guys are pressed for time. You often have to make quick decisions. You have to pull a lot of data together. And reading through the article is not necessarily a fast way to get to the data, right? So once they find what they want, they then want to transform it into a map that can go into GIS or bring data into Portrell and whatever. So the challenge was, I'm searching, let's say, in the Carnarvon Basin, and I want to pull together all the information in the Carnarvon Basin, which happens to be in Australia. And I go and I look in Google or Science Direct, and I get over 10,000 articles related. How do you even start that? So I built a tool with the help of the industry, obviously, in allowing you to search for the maps, the figures, the tables that exist in an article, and then you can seamlessly just download that map and bring it into ArcGIS as a georeferenced image. Or you can download a table that might in the article be just an image. You can now download that straight into Excel. So the idea is to make the data accessible, faster, more efficient, more productive.
And this is made on purpose for geologists.
Yes.
I read in the mission of Elsevier that the mission is empowering people with knowledge. Now, you look for knowledge, Elsevier looks for knowledge, and then it sells it. So Elsevier sometimes is accused to sell research back to the same institutes that carry out the work. What do you say to that?
I think the process, if you go back to our history, right? When really we were a publisher, just print, right? And we were looking to find efficiencies in the way we disseminate science. At that point, you subscribed, you got your print journal in the mail. But there were challenges in the late 60s because different authors were submitting it in print. Others were starting to submit it in computer, and we didn't have a way to manage that, right? And so the path that we went down was to try and solve those inefficiencies and issues in productivity so that, one, we can handle all the science the same, or relatively speaking, streamline it. But then two, to disseminate it in a way that, everyone can actually search and download. And so I think that there's a service there that we started with Science Direct, but I think today the service that we provide to authors and particularly in the geoscience community is creating a network. And it's not just that we're publishing the content. We're creating algorithms that create recommendations. So like you go into Amazon, people who search for this also like this. We do that in the science as well. And I just remember when I was a graduate student, and this was back in the day when we had GeoRef, which I don't know if you remember, it came on a CD-ROM and you stuck it in and you searched very simple search terms. And then you'd go to the stacks and you'd pull out your book and you'd go through the journal articles, you'd photocopy, and go that way. And I just think the way that we've invested to bring that science to the forefront, it paved the way for the digitization of the article in the industry. And I think we continue to invest in that through all of our tools, whether it's an open access journal or even an article that sits behind a paywall.
So can I summarize that when somebody criticizes Elsevier, like selling research back to the same institutes that carry out the work, you say, yes, but Elsevier adds value?
Absolutely.
So let's enter into this debate that is going on nowadays about the open access. So what is your point of view as representative of Elsevier on the debate of open access?
Yeah, well, I think, it's complex. I listened to Janine Krippner's piece, and I think she really did a good job of framing the complexity. And for those listeners who didn't hear it, right, there's researchers who want to publish a certain way. They want to have it free for everyone to get to. But then there's also researchers who don't. I think there's different ways that information can be shared. Some people want to be able to post it themselves. Other people want it to be discovered on, let's say, a platform like ScienceDirect or even Google or Scholar or whatever it may be. And I think the challenge right now is we're trying to, solve the problem and create efficiencies for every type of customer. Whether or not we will be successful in that is hard to say, but I think the idea is that we are trying to create a model that suits everyone. But there are challenges in the open access model too. I have a friend who is a geoscientist, and he's, wears many hats. He's a researcher, a lecturer, NSF reviewer, author. And, it's not just so straightforward. Some of the journals that he wants to publish in are, $6,000 to publish. And then if you want to make it open access, whereas in the subscription model, we're not asking the author to pay that, where we are transferring the costs to our subscribers. But, spread across everybody, I think it provides a good service.
So Elsevier, does it have like a robust position on the open access? Don't you have like a statement position?
An ideological position? No. I think, first and foremost, the thing that I've come to know about Elsevier and is that they're extremely customer centric. We have so many people who work in our company who were doctors or geologists or biologists, chemists, scientists themselves that really do believe in the value that we're delivering to the researcher. I think we have developed many tools or acquired many tools that say that we do believe in the open access, and we are, driving towards that. I think we're the third largest open access publisher today, and I think, our goal is to grow that because our customers demand it. And I think, we are extremely customer focused in that regard.
Yeah, well, sometimes the customers may ask something that is against the company itself. So that is why I'm wondering if there is a very firm position or if it is flexible depending on the situations. For instance, right now there is a debate in Europe more than in North America about the open access, and European countries, they would like to reach the open access to all scientific publications by 2020.
Yeah, I think, in some ways there are some parallels with the music industry in that Napster came along and was kind of forcing the idea that music should just be free for people to download, right? And, come 10 years later, there are now various models, right? You could do Apple Music, where you pay $14.99 for your family, and you can have access to all the music that you want as long as you download it. You can't really share it, but you can listen to it. And I think just as the music industry evolved in creating lots of different options, you can buy a song or you can buy a whole album, or you could go still and buy a CD or an LP.
So using this analogy of music, which I really like, which would be the analogy for the business models that you foresee in the near future?
So that's a really tough one because I think we're still trying to figure that out. I don't think that that's entirely clear. I don't even think the science community has been unanimous in its opinions on whether everything should be open access or not. And I think it'll evolve to where there's a mixture. I know that the deals like Germany and Sweden and others seem to be very prominent, but we also renew.
They're prominent with which business model?
Well, meaning there's pushback against the subscription model, right? That's clear. You see it in the news. But not everybody is pushing back in the subscription model.
So,
and that's
Phoebe,
the
let's
point.
step back and explain to our audience what are the basic business models possible that you see. Maybe one or two, maybe the ones that are at the different poles.
Well, and so in this case, we're really talking about Science Direct, right? We're not talking about the other tools that exist. And really, there's subscription. You can buy everything, and there's lots of different models, and you pay one price annually, and you can get access to everything. And then and that's where you're getting access to open access articles or what's sitting behind a paywall. You, as an author, can submit your article, pay for it, and offer it to the community, the scientific community, in various ways. You can say that you wanted access offered immediately to the public, or there could be a time delay. So there's multiple different, if you're doing gold or you're doing green, there's, in the case of Volcanica, I think it was diamond access. So there's lots of different models, even within the open access, to serve the researcher and the author. For us, those are almost two different situations, or we almost like to treat them separately, right? You can do pay-per-view. You can buy an article one at a time through discovery through Google. You can buy chunks of articles at a time, or you can subscribe to all of Science Direct or parts within that on an annual fee. That is the analogy to the music industry, right? You can buy one song at a time or one article at a time, or you can, buy Apple Music and get access to it all. But that is very different than, how authors are choosing to publish with us. They're two different issues and models.
In the analogy with the music, there's a great thing to distinguish, which is that the authors are never paid. The authors that they write, the articles, scientific articles, they don't get paid, while the authors that they write the songs or that they play the songs, they get a percentage of that. So, in fact, Elsevier has like 400,000 peer review research articles per year. And I would like to ask you, how do you see the role of the writers, the authors, or the reviewers that provide the content, but in reality they don't receive any pay from Elsevier? Just I imagine that if Elsevier had to pay them just $10 to each of them, it would be like 4 million per year. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, well, I think in some ways they are contributing, right? They are part of the ecosystem that is allowing the science to be disseminated. And we absolutely rely on, the time that these people give to us, both the reviewers and the researchers. But to say that they're not getting anything from it, I think is not totally true, right?
No, don't get money.
Right. They don't get money. That's true. I think our editors in chief are the ones that get paid, right? They're the ones that we do pay them. But I think that ultimately, there is a prestige in being a reviewer. That means that you yourself are being, you have been established in whatever subject it is that you're doing. You're an expert in that field, and you're contributing to the science in that way. And so, it is pretty prestigious, I think, to have a position on a board, whether it's an Elsevier journal or whatever. I mean, there is something.
Yeah, of course, especially since the system where the academics mainly they are positioned, it kind of requires that prestigious position. But have you ever thought, or is there any discussion about paying for real some amount to the authors?
That I'm not really sure about, to be honest. Yeah, I'm not really sure about that.
Because that is something that nobody's talking about, but it could be as simple as the analogy you made for music. I don't know which is the percentage that the writers they take about it, but if we want to continue on that analogy, there should be at least a matter of debate.
Yeah, I think it gets complex because then you're asking researchers to not just pay for their articles to get published, but then you're asking them, or yeah.
Yeah. So in a way, it could be instead of paying them, it could be reduce the price that they have to pay to publish. But anyhow, I think that the open source debate is there, and we're going to talk more about that as soon as we clarify also the positions, because as you said, even the academic world is not fully on board on the so-called S plan of the European Union that is taking place right now. So another point in here I would like to talk is about, we talk about empowering the people with knowledge, but do you see the obstacles to empowering the people with knowledge? For instance, I'm thinking about people that they don't have internet access. So that would be a big obstacle to reach half of the population that they don't have adequate energy, and therefore they don't have any internet. Is that one of the main obstacles that you find, or you find other obstacles?
In terms of accessing the knowledge? Well,
yes.
I think for the most part, the people that are doing the research and the people that are consuming the research, do have access to the internet, right? We don't print other on demand, right? But I think for the most part, the communities that we serve and the customers that we serve, which is why we're in business, they do have access to the internet. I think that there are partnerships that Elsevier has absolutely been involved in, particularly I think of one with UNESCO, Research for Life, where UNESCO actually provided computers to third world countries or developing countries, and then Elsevier provided the scientific content so that they could access it for free. So there's lots of partnerships that we're involved in to help, and partnering with people who, we're not in the computer industry or the internet industry, but I think where we can help is when they do have it, or partnering with agencies and organizations that see that as their mission, then we can provide the knowledge. And that's really, the focus for our business. I wonder, though, how many people actually do not have access to the internet when you think about, the phones, right? Everywhere in the world I go, everybody has a phone.
Since I'm a field geologist and I travel around valleys and mountains, there are a lot of places in the underdeveloped countries where there's no internet access, or even if there is the possibility of having internet, some people, they do not have that luxury. I would like to move on to talk about the digital transformation that began in the 90s. Can you describe it from your point of view, this digital transformation with publishers?
Yeah, well, I think, as I mentioned, it started really in the late 60s when we were trying to figure out how to make the publishing process more efficient and how to get knowledge out there faster and quicker for researchers. So that really started, in investing in companies and investing over decades on how to accept transcripts and convert them into a digital format that we can then disseminate outwards. I think in the 90s, I talked to some of my publishing colleagues who were around back then, and it was literally just, trying to play around with a paper manuscript and how do you tag, what is the right metadata, what is the metadata schema that you need to be able to make things discoverable. The first step is, first to digitize it. But then the second step is, how do you make that discoverable? And there were lots of iterations. And when we think about Elsevier's transformation from publisher to information provider, the first phase was trying to get the paper to digital and then discover it. And then I think now, and that really culminated with the launch of Science Direct in 1997. But since then, we have dozens of products that take it a step further, that move more into helping scientists like yourself make better decisions. And how do you get to the data that's in there? Can we predict outcomes for different decisions that you are making in the scientific workflow? So it's really been a two-step process. I think the third step is still yet to come, and that's when you get into AI and machine learning and predictive analytics, where many people, particularly in the oil and gas industry, are already ahead and thinking about.
Where do we stand in these first steps? Are we in the infancy of it, or we already have some products that can help practically? Yeah,
so I think it depends on where you are in our business. I think the pharma industry, and I'm going to move away from academia for a second, they're already thinking about investment decisions for drugs, right? How do you bring drugs to market? And so we have some tools that are starting to get into that. I think in one of Elsevier's sister companies, LexisNexis, they already have those predictive tools that are helping lawyers make decisions on which cases, what is going to be the outcome of a case that they may try based on the case law and what happens there. So I think our company is definitely moving in that direction, and we're at various different stages with it. And I think for, a tool like geofacets, bringing it back to the oil and gas industry, we are in the early stages of that.
We are behind the pharma and the lawyers.
I think so.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think the oil and gas industry has been a bit slower. And I don't know if it's because the amount of data. I mean, I think it's something like, 2.5, quadrillion terabytes of information are created a day, right? If you just think about that. And the oil and gas industry has been really good in managing the structured data. So seismic, well data, et cetera. But when it comes to unstructured data, well reports, that might end up in PDF or a PowerPoint where you're getting together with your colleagues and then deciding, where you might drill or not drill, ranking your opportunities.
This
right?
interview is non-structured data.
This is non-structured
right?
data, right? I mean, so they have not been great at managing.
How do you manage the non-structured data?
Yeah, so I think that was something that geofacets is solving. The pain point that we heard from our customers, particularly in the oil and gas industry, was, it's hard to get to the figures, the tables, and the maps and that are in the publications, right? We don't want to have to read all the publications, and then once we find it, then we need to bring it into something. But just that finding, how do you find a isopac map in the Carnarvon Basin in a particular formation easily? You add metadata to that, right? And so most of the work is, one, creating extracting the metadata from the unstructured material, building the schema in order to organize that, and then running it over hundreds of thousands of documents to then classify and aggregate and then disseminate, right?
You mentioned already twice that there is a request from the geologist working in industry to extract figures from papers or articles. So I'm wondering if you have experienced this change in the way of reading. The people, students, researchers, regular citizens, it seems that they have changed. We have changed the way in which we read. Is that something that you research on in order to capture what the reader is looking for? Because now we don't read anymore in a continuous unidirectional flow like it was before.
Yeah, I think we hear that pain point a lot when we're talking to customers, we often get, oh, well, can't you just summarize a bunch of, what's the outcomes of this, right? And tell me just what the conclusion is. And you hear that a lot of times. They'll read the abstract, the beginning of the abstract, and then they'll go to the conclusion, and maybe they'll pick out the middle. I think that is a challenge. I think I just find, even for myself, I used to sit down with the New York Times and read it pretty much like end to end on a Sunday.
What about now?
And now it's, a mixture of browsing through the paper, reading some articles online. I think there's almost like a...
And why did you change?
Lack of time, right? Just trying to fit more in. I don't know.
And the question is it worth it?
That, for me, I do like it that way because I feel like I'm covering more ground. I think the things that I really want to sink my teeth into, yes, I'll sit down and read. But I think that you see this particularly a lot, not just in my household, but, in industry and academia. There's just I think that the problem is that there's so much information out there that how do you possibly consume it all? And then there's like almost fear of missing out, that you're missing something, so you're trying to cover everything.
Don't this habit bring us to a place of more superficial understanding of the things? Trying to read more about everything instead of reading the same amount but about specific topics, because this is the knowledge, right? If you're trying to empowering people with knowledge, we, in this case you, would need to have also the responsibility to decide what is knowledge. Is it knowledge just reading the abstract and the conclusion, or this is just information and maybe it's different than knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, I think discovering what you want to read, finding the efficiencies to find the relevant information is pretty important, right? You have to find the relevant information. I think most of the researchers I know, and I'm sure your colleagues, and I'm sure, most scientists are not going to just browse everything. They can't. I mean, you work for an oil company, there's huge risks in that. And I think that there's a difference for lay people who are just consuming science because they're interested in it, versus people that their jobs and the revenue of their company depends upon it, or the ability for them to get ahead in their careers as a professor, researcher, tenured professor. You can't build your whole career on browsing the science, right?
Yeah, so those are questions that I ask myself, because it is important to understand that me as an author, I have to write in a different way now, because I know that the reader is different, and the reader is surfing, is scrolling the article differently than years ago. And therefore, as you probably highlighted it, you emphasize the abstract, the conclusions, or bullet points, or you are more synthetic. Just wondering if that is the real knowledge that we want to pass on when you have the responsibility to show to the public or to the society a work that has taken like 5 years or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think our job, Elsevier, if I talk, is to provide the ability to discover the science that's out there, and then create different medium in which people consume it, right? You could read the abstract and you could, just read the conclusion, but the science is there to consume if you want it in detail. And I think most people do that. But then there's summaries. I think, we have different types of products and solutions available, so that if people want to upload their manuscript in an early stage, I'm really talking about SSRN, they can, and they can share it with the community, and they can get feedback early stages. I think just the explosion of social media, there's so many different ways to share information right now, and different people want to consume it differently. And our job is to really provide what our customers and the science community are asking for.
Is it part of your job to figure out what do readers or customers are looking for? So like youngsters, they go through specific social media. Old style professors, they like more the full article. Is that part of your job?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, as we make the transformation from publisher to, information analytics company, that is the result of that, right? It's really understanding what are the trends in the scientific community, where they want to go, and then trying to provide a solution. Well, I can really speak mainly for the oil and gas industry because that's where I've spent the last 10 years of my time.
So let's talk about the oil and gas industry.
Yeah. So I think when we started talking to our customers in the oil and gas industry, there were super pain points just around making decisions faster. And when you go back to the ability to freeze through information quickly, I heard that a lot. It's like, I just don't have the time to, capture everything that I need to know to make this interpretation, to make a recommendation to my company or to rank opportunities. And then it's like, how do you manage all the information? And particularly in the last downturn, what I saw happening was all these very senior people in the industry with a ton of knowledge, both in their head and on their desktop computers or in their own folders, taking early retirement or going back to academia, and that knowledge just walks out. So I think the industry, or at least in the upstream oil and gas industry, there has been a challenge around how do you maintain that knowledge. And as you know, you're always going back and exploring places that you've probably already been before. And each time you go to a place and 5 years later, maybe you don't actually drill there, you go away. Or you drill there and you drill a dry hole and you go away. And then that place comes back on a list 5 years later, and then you have to find all that information.
So what was the solution to those colleagues that they retire and they leave behind a couple of folders or digital folders or thousands of folders with a lot of PowerPoints and reports and unstructured data? I
think it requires investment by the oil and gas companies to structure it and manage it so that they don't. And, we're talking about the digital side. There's also, I go in and I talk to our customers and, they talk about warehouses at Iron Mountain of,
core repositories.
Right. And also just boxes and boxes of information that people just don't even know that exists. And I heard a story from one customer who they went and they drilled a well and it ended up being dry. And then, somebody was retiring and cleaning out their office and found a well report for a well that was drilled, 5 years earlier, 2 miles away, and nobody knew that existed. And so I think the need to do this is not just because it would make your life more efficient, but the business, the profits of the business, or the reduction of the risk to do that is minimized. And
but Phoebe, you don't have the solution yet.
So we are doing that. So when we launched GeoFacets and we went out to oil companies and we were promoting it, that was the first question that came to mind from, can you do this with our data? Can you geofacetize our data and put it in there? And, I don't think then we were ready to do that. We were really focused very much on, launching the product and making the product successful. But when you keep hearing it over and over and over again, you just can't ignore that from your customers. So there are some companies that we are working with to help them do this. And I think we are in a good position to do it because we do this with our own. We do this with our own content. This is how we went from publisher to
Mr. Wolf. You arrive to the office, you say, okay, who's retiring? You are retiring. Let me see your PC. And then what you do is you work ad hoc on that specific data set, and you kind of digitalize and you go through all of
No,
these?
I mean, clearly companies are prioritizing, right? Usually it comes from a team that's working on a particular asset that has the need to organize the data because they're going to need it soon. So, yes, I'm not saying we're coming in and, just cleaning house and making all nice pretty. No, but it's the real practical situations are that, working with individual teams that have a data set that they need to, or information that they need to manage and structure.
So you kind of guide the process.
No, we're at the heart of the process. It's taking their content and, extracting the information that's necessary, whether it's an article, a report. I mean, if it's in, format that we can consume it in, and then serving it back to them either in geofacets or, as a data set that they can use in another tool.
I see. And I would like to know, we always talk about big data. What does it mean, big data, for you in Elsevier? Do you have like a concept behind that? Because there are many different ways to define it, or sometimes used as a synonymous of machine learning.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it depends on the tool that we're looking to apply it to. But for us, really, I mean, there's many different solutions that we use. Apply machine learning. Image recognition is just one of those things that we use a lot. But I think for us, it's trying to leverage technology, write algorithms, do text mining to basically organize information to help deliver value to whichever scientist or community that or industry that we're trying to solve. I mean, for Elsevier, we employ over 1,000 data scientists. So we, out of a company with 7,000 employees, we have invested heavily in that because the market demands that of us. And it could be as simple as writing the, recommender. If you like this, then, you might like this article. Or if you've read this, you might like these articles. To also making connections between topics and different disciplines of science that are related, or trying to find trends in the information that's being published. For example, we have a product, SciVal, that allows us to look at benchmarking different institutions in terms of research output. But I could also look up, Daniel, your profile and see, who you've collaborated with to publish. What are the different authors that you've published with? What are the different topics that you've published on? So we use that concept of big data in various ways to run analytics on the information to find trends and serve it up to the community. It manifests itself in many ways.
Yes. And researchers, we talk a lot about researchers, both in academia and industry, but you probably are experiencing the collaboration between these two worlds. And is it their interaction, the interaction between the researchers in academia and researchers in industry that develop the integration of disciplines and maybe also the findings of new technology?
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a trend that you do see between the collaborations, the cross collaborations from academic with industry and even corporates or industry and industry, right? And I think part of that is when you look at the trends of investment in basic research, right, versus like applied research, R&D, that's gone down. I think we all know that it's tougher to get dollars for research. It's more competitive and so forth. And so I think that trend of more collaboration and collaborations between academia and industry is a manifestation of that. I think also I think you might, thinking outside the box, if you're always collaborating with the same people, you're not really bringing fresh ideas maybe. And I think the idea of collaborating or finding interest in that idea of multidisciplinary research is starting to take root, or it already has, because you see also the cross-disciplinary publications that are coming out are also on the rise, right?
So talk more about the trends of the negative trends of the investment in the basic research. When did they start?
Oh, well, that I don't actually know, but I did read an article about a month ago that really shows the shift from, let's say, governments and institutional funders to basic research. And even in corporations. I mean, I think you hear about the old shale labs that used to exist in the oil and gas industry, the research centers that used to exist in the oil and gas industry, and those kind of gone away, and they outsource that now, right, to different companies to do that. They're just not sustainable, right? And so I think
they're not sustainable. You mean economically, or this is a strategic choice? Because you're talking about industry now, right?
Yeah.
So, because I see that there's less funding for basic science for academics, and therefore there could be the will of academia to partner with industry. On the other side, industry has less and less time, which you have repeat a couple of times, and so they probably need the academics to read the papers, for instance.
I think it's quite a symbiotic relationship. So, you asked, though, about the negative side to that. I don't know if there is a negative side to that. It may just be that this is the best way.
So do you see, where you're working, do you see that we are like in a blob right now? Is a situation where it is not very well defined, we don't know where we are going, or you're in a place where you have a clear vision where we're going?
I think that's hard in the industry of scientific. I think that's hard to say, right? Because every industry is kind of different. I think with the medical research, I can't speak for those industries, but I do think that it's quite clear that the need to collaborate, right, is driven by the fact that we don't have endless amounts of time to do research or endless amounts of dollars. And it may actually be a good thing to have industry and academia collaborating together. You may have better outcomes in the science.
Yeah. Well, I would like to conclude with the collaboration between author and publisher, describing your interesting logo, the logo of Elsevier, which is a man under an elm tree with an entwined vine, and the writing non solus.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain that?
So it means really not alone, right? Not going it alone, and the idea came from the idea to bring the author and the publisher or the together so that we could provide greater knowledge and dissemination of science to the larger community. Yeah, that logo has been around a long time, and it's funny because when I first was thinking about working for Elsevier, I actually was a headhunter reached out to me, and I was thinking Elsevier, and then I remembered, oh yes, of course, it's the logo.
Yeah. So Phoebe McMellon, geologist and director of marketing, engineering and technology at Elsevier. There's an open mic if you want to shout out. If you want to express your ideas that you couldn't up to now, the mic is open. You can, this is a radio that is for everybody. We welcome all parts of the Geological Society. This is a community radio, a KPFT. We are in HD2 channel in Houston, and you're welcome to express yourself.
Yeah, I just wanted to mainly just go back to one point about the challenges, particularly in the oil and gas industry. I remember when the first downturn, in the 90s, really, and there was that. I had professors who worked in the oil and gas industry who then became academic professors of mine, and the knowledge that they left with. And then with the second downturn that, recently happened, I definitely saw a difference, I think, in that I think much more of that data and information was preserved. And so I'm kind of hoping that at least the industry is starting to recognize the cost of losing those people and that knowledge. And I'm kind of optimistic that we're at a point, at least in the upstream exploration, that companies are realizing the importance of the value that people hold both in their minds and on their desktops, and looking to solve that.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. And this was, again, Daniel Minizini, your inquisitive geologist at KPFT HD2 channel with Mini Geology radio show, the weekly program that puts in contact geology and society at large. We talked today with Phoebe McMellon and representing Elsevier. You can find this interview at minigeology.com. You can write me at minigeology@gmail.com to propose who to interview, which topics to develop together. And you can also tweet at minigeology, or also writing at the LinkedIn Daniel Minizini. Alright, so that's all for now. Thank you, Phoebe, so much for coming directly from New York to the
Thank you,
flatlands.
Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
See you, everybody.
Nobody serves there, not at all. No, 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 no. Nobody serves down in Fresno. But everybody there, they rock and roll. Rock and roll, yeah. If you're going downtown and you put your love out on display, there'll be bandits in disguises that'll steal your heart away. Go ahead, tell me the answer. Yeah, get right down, make my day. Enjoy all that sweet loving. Just remember that there is a price to pay. But nobody serves down in Fresno. Yeah, nobody serves there, not at all. No, 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 nobody serves down in Fresno. But everybody there, they rock and roll, rock and roll. Up in the morning, I turn on the radio. The DJ tells me the weather. The sun shines, the wind's gonna blow. There's a bus leaving from the station. Ain't nobody wanna go. I'm looking for my temptation. Instead, I just everybody there, they rock and roll.